Hello, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Here we are in spring, end of April. I've got flowers blooming and rabbits eating them in my yard. So hopefully, other people are having nice Aprils. Um, and welcome to OS Query Office Hours. Uh, I don't have any announcements for today. I don't know if anyone else does. Okay, no announcements. The next section is sort of an open-ended section. If people have any questions or PRs they're stuck on, the intent here is sort of to give anyone joining us from the broader community a chance to raise any issues or just say hi or anything they'd like to do. I see at least one person maybe I don't recognize. Welcome, Daniel. Hopefully I got your name right.
Hi there.
If there's anything you want to ask us about, now's a great time.
No, I'm just listening because I want to just learn. Hopefully, in the future, I can collaborate with you.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And if anyone else has any questions, otherwise we will jump into what people listed ahead of time. Okay, moving on then. First agenda item is finalizing 5.2.3. Only 2 indents on those, please, Mike.
These are all top level headers.
Yeah, I usually use top levels for the main agenda items. Anyhow, finalizing 5.2.3. We talked about doing this last week, and then I think we dropped the ball. I don't know if there's anything blocking it from being declared stable. I haven't done any testing. Fleet did a little bit of testing. I think I accidentally released it to all of the Linux repositories, so I think it got some testing.
Yeah, I remember that. Also, our client that was asking us to do this was testing it, I assume.
Okay, I think we should declare it stable. One note, Stefano, I saw your change log for 5.2.3. Thank you for putting that up. I left some comments on it. I would just merge that to master. I wouldn't merge that to the release branch.
Okay.
Because we're not going to rebuild 5.2.3, so if you merge it to that tag, it like redefines the tag. So I would just merge it to master, and we often merge change logs after we cut a release, so it seems fine.
So why did the read the docs build fail?
Because it's running on a branch that doesn't have a fix for that.
Oh, okay.
The Jinja 2 dependency only went in the master and not, yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to merge to the branch. Merging it to master is fine. If no one objects, I'll just click you the button to declare 5.2.3 stable.
Okay.
Does anyone think otherwise? We did actually push 5.2.2 out. 5.2.2. Okay, so 5.2.3. I don't quite remember how this worked. 5.2.3 was the one we cherry picked.
Yeah, that was the security updates.
Right, and we did that because we didn't want didn't want to cut 5.3 just then because it had other stuff in it. And then maybe we accidentally made 2 different 5.2.3s.
Yeah, well, one reason that it happened is because the first build of 5.2.3 failed on the packaging side. It had to be updated.
Yeah.
Actually, on the code side, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I have just clicked the buttons to make 5.2.3 stable. And I guess I'll put up a website PR later on. I don't know if I'll rebuild everything or just use the last we did on this one. Maybe I'll just rebuild everything and not think too hard about it. Anyhow, that's stable.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
No, thank you.
It has been blessed. Next up is a 5.3.0 release. I don't know that we've got a handful of small PRs that are hanging out that I think we could merge pretty easily. Other than that, I think we could probably roll this almost whenever.
Thank you, Charbel, for the review on my Windows caching, user and groups caching on Windows.
Yeah, I added a caveat that I'm still learning Windows APIs and all those SIDs and GIDs. It's a little bit new to me. And also I cannot get a VM up and running for some reason. So, but I mean, there are tests, the code looks good. I like the approach. And I think it's also a much needed issue and a much long-standing issue.
I did run that on a Windows machine, but not a big beefy Active Directory server. So if Charbel thinks the code's fine, I looked at it. That's approval.
Yeah, and I do like that there are tests, so that helps a lot. Kind of figure out intent as well.
May I hit merge on this?
I mean, it's got approval on it, right?
Okay, I was just getting double approval. All right, I'm merging it.
I mean, I don't think if it was controversial, then maybe you could hold out for some double approval or something, right? But like everyone's been supportive of this, so I think you're fine.
Merged.
Yay. Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Trail of Bits. Thank you, Charbel.
Stefano did a lot of work on that side. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's huge. Are these other PRs listed in our milestone?
Yeah, there is. So I've totally forgot to see if the release tests were working on the Arch side of things. So there was a library that I had to change name because it changes on the platform. And yeah, another minor change that I see Alessandro has already approved on on his own PR, just changing one of the columns from index to additional. It's mostly like cosmetic, to be fair, because yeah, the column doesn't contain unique values, but currently, as far as I know, SQLite, and we are not really using that property, but additionally is better because it's actually changing where the table is passing packages. So this is the, sorry, maybe I didn't give the subject, it's the deb packages table on Linux. And I've changed the column attribute of admin dir, the new column we have added, from index to additional.
Did this merge yet?
No, I just linked it in the chat.
You just linked it in the chat. Okay.
And otherwise, there's also, yeah, the pull request from Joe about the non-blocking flag for special files.
Mm-hmm. I'd say there's a couple of other PRs that I know I've seen. I think maybe there's some from, let's see, if I skim down the list here, certificates table, that sounds pretty nice. Try and review that.
There's also a macOS one on adding the kind column.
Yeah, that's from Charbel. There's updating a reverse shell query pack. That's probably fine. There's this cider function as a SQLite function. I haven't read that yet, but that could be pretty cool. Ooh, sure. Stefano, you fixed that long-standing CLI flag bug, maybe?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you want to try and get that in soon?
Sure. I mean, yeah, if we are ready to review it.
I wonder what'll break.
Yeah. I mean, no, it shouldn't. So it shouldn't break anything because, first of all, for the majority of the flags, they wouldn't be re-evaluated anyway. So, I mean, beyond no, so it doesn't even make the configuration fail. Just it just doesn't update the flag and gives a warning. So it's not like, yeah, it doesn't break your current configuration. There may be a couple of cases where, which I don't know, where the flag was maybe reevaluated and the end user was maybe expecting that to happen, but I don't know.
Okay. No. Mostly all looks pretty straightforward. And Mike, it looks like you're pushing to get this out by the end of April.
Yeah, at least in the pre-release one.
Okay. That doesn't sound unreasonable to me.
I would just
See
say
if we manage, but
if there's things that we like, let's see that we can get those through review and approval before then.
okay. Process for code review.
Yeah, I added this to the document. So my thoughts here were that we have a good tradition of not approving our own organization's pull requests just so that nobody's unilaterally changing Osquery, right? But I think in order with this team size we have and the diversity of skill sets we have, I don't think that we can additionally wait for somebody who is an expert in the niche that's being changed. We can't always do that, right? Like I think some skill sets, especially like Windows, is we don't have two companies with Windows engineers, so we end up, I think, stalling a lot of that work. That's the thing I'm seeing, but I don't know what everyone else thinks.
So
I think I've said this in the past, but I really don't feel like we need people from multiple organizations reviewing things unless there's some reason that will be controversial, the changes.
this came up somewhere in maybe 1 or 2 office hours ago, and my view, which I think we had mostly consensus on, is maybe a little more strident than Zach's, but it's something like, if Trail of Bits drops like a pretty involved C++ PR down, I'm going to look to Trail of Bits to vet the C++, and I might kind of be curious about, like, do I think the functionality is the right direction? So it's worth, I think this probably comes up most often for Trail of Bits. And, if Stefano puts out a giant PR, I'm going to look to Alessandro to review it. And I'm fine with that. Like, I appreciate the chance to weigh in on it. So I'd feel a little bit weird if y'all like hurried it past us. But ultimately, I'm going to look to you folk for C++ expertise. So I would be totally cool with like drop a review on and then like get one of us to merge it or drop a soft approval on and then be like, yeah, the code looks right. Can someone else sign off? I don't know if those solve the problem or not.
So it works. It works for us, obviously, but I mean, I think just speaking for myself currently, but maybe for the team, we're concerned about a future potential when another contributor ends up being very active and works unilaterally. Like we want to avoid that with maintaining like a policy of two independent reviewers. On the other hand, and I guess my point was it doesn't stack with the additional hesitance to review things that are slightly unfamiliar code to the people in other teams. So if various teams develop specialties, then they're going to end up just blocked.
I don't want to solve the future problem until we have it.
Okay.
Because we grow so slowly. So If
We-
we
we-
think that there's an actual problem, then I think we should talk about it. But if we're sort of just like, well, in an ideal world, like we wouldn't want Collide or Fleet DM to suddenly like take over some subsystem. But I don't know. It's
Okay, not a problem currently. There's always the committee to resolve an issue if it happens, and it's not like randos have right access. So it's just a matter of like the 2 or 3 people in the committee
yeah, and I
trusting one
mean,
another.
yeah, and I think we do, right? Trail of Bits has one person, because yeah, one person on the TSC right now. Collide has 1, Fleet has 2, Trail of Bits has an extra person who can approve, though. I think we're fine. You know, I think if we find there are problems, we should think harder and resolve them.
Okay. Okay. Well, then in the next PR that is kind of substantial, if it's in something that nobody else really knows how to evaluate, we will take it upon ourselves to have a second or third person here review it with well-described PR. So there's no giant mystery PRs, but at the same time, that's like all we can do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all start putting up obfuscated C++ code, we're maybe going to look at you a lot differently, but
It's not obfuscated any more than it has to be because it's code. But yeah, you know how it is. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have a good track record. Years, a lot of us have years track record of working together in this project, and I think have a pretty good shared understanding of what's acceptable and what's not. So I am inclined to move towards the thing that allows folks to move faster and with more independence. And if we overcompensate that way, then we'll just correct.
okay, that's good.
It also helps that, I've done this in the past with the M1 PR. Like I just ping Alessandro and Stefano and say, hey, can we just do a quick Google Meet just to kind of, guide me through it? And that helped out a lot. So, if the PRs are kind of big, that would help others review it easily, I think.
Okay, all right. Well, before I relent this agenda bullet point, we have 41 open PRs, and if I sort by at least recently updated, I know some of these are our own. So I guess it's just a question of whether we want to move a little faster with those and just go ahead and do things, or if these PRs should be closed because they're just blocked for other reasons.
I think that's going to have to depend on a one-by-one basis, I think.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I think for
I don't
the
want to go through a dozen of the PRs right now, but something to consider.
I think for the majority, they are actually ready. They just need to have review. I don't think there are that many that are blocked on something.
I mean, one thing that I'm always happy to do is to kind of give like, is this something that aligns with my view of what should go in Osquery? Like, I'm happy to take that box. It doesn't take that much time. And I trust people from the same organization to do the technical review for sure. I also trust people from the same organization to say, this is just obviously fits for what the vision of Osquery is, and just move forward without me. But if there's any doubt, I'm happy to be involved in the conversation there. It's just, for me, it's an issue of having the bandwidth to actually read through and understand that C++ code.
Yeah. How about this proposition? If the PRs we have open can't be placed on 5.4, then maybe they shouldn't be open PRs. Is that reasonable?
If they can't be placed on 5.4, which means
So
the next release, so a couple months from now, probably.
Yeah, if we can't see these being mergeable by reasonably the next release within 2 months. then do they belong in open PRs, or are they kind of just too blueprinty at the moment?
I buy that.
Okay, so we'll go through them and figure out if that's true.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, we can continue with the agenda.
Cleaning up backlog always good. Next agenda item we have is a demo of some of the BPF functionality. Alessandro, that's probably yours to lead.
Yeah. We have been working on a new POC that allows you to trace network events in a better way compared to what we have in core. Instead of going through the system calls, it works by installing kprobs in some of the internal kernel functions. And this is now possible because we are actually parsing the debug symbols from the kernel and then on the fly generating the BPF code that we need to read it. So the TLDR is that it is able to provide the same things, or actually better, with lower CPU and memory usage. It is container aware. And yeah, it's just an experiment for now. We are trying to stabilize this and trying to merge it soon. The only downside here is that compared to what we have in core, it has some additional requirements on the kernel. It will require a kernel which is 5.8 or better. And in the case of CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you only need 4.18. So the demo, you can download it from the BPF channel from the Osquery Slack. And yeah, let us know what you think about it.
Alessandro, I see the limitations about IPv4 and TCP versus UDP. Are those the same limitations that the existing socket events table has?
Not really. So the problem right now is that it's only partially supporting the events that I wanted to handle. So IPv6 is not there yet. The current code that we have in master is able to trace both UDP and TCP. However, it's not as precise. The problem there is that we are working through the system calls, and so we have to piece together the information based on the file descriptors. And so in some cases, when you set up your socket in a certain way using the AF and spec value, you may not be able to retrieve back the type of the socket. And so while the code in master can usually see both TCP and UDP, it's sometimes missing things. This new POC will be able to handle both TCP and UDP, and ideally ICMP. And right now, it already always provides both the local and remote port and IP address, which is not something we can do within core or even with audit. And I can make an example there. If you happen to handle a connection without calling a bind first, you won't be able to get the local port, for example. But the new POC traces things directly in the kernel, and so there is no need to look for any bind syscall.
Sounds awesome. What needs to happen to take this from like POC to shipped?
There are a couple of things I want to implement still. So I think IPv6 and UDP are really important. There are a couple of columns that are missing there, namely the timestamp the parent process ID. And then I would also like to add support for showing the full binary path. Right now, it is only showing the com, which is usually the same as the file name. But thanks to the fact that we are creating the BPF probe on the fly, we can probe the kernel for features that we need. And so I will implement a new patch in the library that will look for the helpers needed to actually capture the full absolute path of the binary. And this should also work with containers. The way it works is that it looks into the C group information of the process so that you can get in line with the event and in the container without having to query other things. So yeah, that's another really good thing about it. The current code that we have in Osquery, whether it is for BPF or audit, has quite some complex machine state algorithm to piece together the various events. This new POC does not require that. Everything is captured by the probe itself. And so basically what you see in Osquery is what you get from the probe. So that's another reason why this is a huge performance boost compared to core. And yeah, I haven't mentioned this, but in the future, I would like to also add process events. Hey, welcome back. I was mentioning in the future, I would also like to implement process events and completely replace what we have in core.
You said process events. How does that compare with the BPF process events table?
The BPF process events is also quite heavy because we have to trace all the file descriptors, how they are created, inherited, duplicated, and destroyed. So we, given that we do not know where Osquery is being run, we cannot make assumptions, and so we are tracing the system calls. And it is quite heavy because we end up tracing the open system calls for pretty much everything happening on the system.
You mentioned kernel limitations. Is that something that would affect the entire runtime, or just sort of these tables if they get called, or like how does that play out in reality?
Only these tables. The requirement is actually the BTF kernel debug symbols that only some kernels are exporting. The tables, the operating systems I tried were CentOS 8 and Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Ubuntu 20.04, which seem to be working fine, Fedora 35. So most of the recent distributions should work fine.
I'm mostly concerned about whether this changes our supported platform story, or if it just means that you don't get access to that table.
Yeah. I haven't made a pull request yet, but in the pull request, I've introduced traditional flags. The first one is named Enable Experiments. The second flag is a list of experiments that you can enable. And there's a loader part there that will instantiate the tables on the fly without going through all the spec file or auto generation. So in theory, you can just easily delete a table by deleting a folder.
Do you need that raises two interesting questions. Okay, one of them is, do you actually need two flags, or like why enable the experiment? Why have a Boolean and a list? The Boolean should be false if the list is empty. And then the other thought here is, you said you're auto-generating the specs based on what?
It is generating the table plugin on the fly by talking to the registry. So
Is
this
that-
allows us to have all the code completed inside a folder.
Is that something we'd like to for normal usage? Like years ago, Facebook talked about removing spec files for something like that, and I don't know that they ever actually did work.
I think they can be useful if we want to have interoperation with things like the website. I guess if we want to remove them, we could introduce a new flag that dumps the table list with the schema, and so we can use that to regenerate the metadata we need for the website.
I mean, that's what happens. We don't. The website doesn't use the spec files. We generate a JSON blob, and then we ship the JSON blob.
Well,
Okay,
the JSON blob though is taken from the spec file. It is importing the spec files since it's Python. And
Yeah, it's just implementation, though. It could just as easily go through the registry if you went that way.
The
yeah,
spec files are also kind of used by the build system to figure out what files to include on each platform, right?
But that was the
no,
CMake stuff.
it does. No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
actually-
because there's like an implementation, like gen at file name thing in the spec file. Is that no longer used?
Okay, wait.
Entry point is
Maybe,
still there.
yeah, sorry. I mean, maybe I understood the question incorrectly. So, I mean, CMake, it is using, like, if you are, it is using the spec files to generate or not, yeah, the table, in the sense that if you're not specifying a spec file into CMake, that table is not generated, but only the interface part. But yeah, I mean, we can just come up with just a list of a list of table names instead of the whole spec file.
And yeah, as Sharby mentioned, yeah, it works in a similar way. What I have implemented, but instead of using static initialization, I'm actually calling the registry. So you can load and unload tables without having to go through the spec files or static initialization.
That sounds like a pretty interesting thing. I feel like we should try and stare at. I guess I see three things in this PR, and I haven't even read the PR. One of them is the introduction of experiments, which I think is cool, and I think there was broad agreement for. And like maybe I would nitpick about the command line flags, but you know, who cares, right? One of them is the actual code itself, which sounds pretty cool, and I understand why you're starting in this as an experiment. And one of them is this idea of maybe we can auto-gen spec files. And I feel like it'll be a little bit weird if we auto-gen spec files for experiments, but then not for things we accept. I feel like eventually we should try and land on one pattern there. Maybe there's a reason to keep spec files.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should think about, like when you put code up, we should think about, is this an auto-gen pattern we like? And if so, what would it take to just move everything to it? What would we need to replace? Versus being like, well, why change?
So there are going to be 0 changes to Osquery, except for the 2 flags I've introduced. Everything else is already available in core. And
Well,
the reason I made it this way was that I feel like experiments are fine if they are completely self-contained and they're not polluting the rest of the Osquery code. So this was a natural step in having everything in a folder can be added or deleted.
I mean, I like the model. I'd love to ditch spec files for it. It makes sense to me. But I don't know if we'll like the code, want to go through the work to spit out the JSON for the website. You know, all of the things we have to do to actually make that the auto-gen part real.
I think it is interesting. I already used this generation method for my another pull request that I never marked stable for the user tracers. And so based on the parameters of the function we wanted to trace, I was generating the columns on the fly. And so this in the future could let you handle schema changes and versionings.
There's a lot of weird things there to work through.
And to add to the weird things, I mean, if anything, I think we really should go away with this static initialization model, where also for the plugins we register things at static time, so before main, basically, because it's causing on the issues on the build itself. Like we have to well, not only the build is bigger for the test, there are also a higher chance to create a build that then crashes, because we are forced to use some. So due to this static initialization stuff, the linker doesn't always know if a certain symbol, which is in static scope, is being actually used in other files, because the usage is in other files. And so what this causes is that we are forced to use the whole archive flag, which basically asks the linker to copy paste all the functions, even if they are unused. And so the linker is not able to do its usual job to drop anything that is unused. And this again means that, first of all, we are creating an amalgamation of all the tables. And so we have a single big CPP files with all the interfaces of all the tables. And when there is a test that needs to query one table, it actually brings in all the tables and all their dependencies. So the test ends up being huge and also take quite a bit to link. So yeah. And if you forget, I don't know, if we add some other registration or any other like global static initialization thing, and we forget to put the whole archive or etc. You don't know until you access that code, because there's no linker error. And so that's pretty. It is a bit annoying in multiple places. The build, but also being able to register or unregister dynamically tables or plugins. Yeah.
I mean, I'm softly amenable. They put up a blueprint or a PR or something, we can talk about it.
Yeah, there's actually an old PR. This was already sort of discussed, not maybe fully, but there was an old PR issue I've opened about the CI hitting the disk limit.
I remember the amalgamation issue. You and Teddy were maybe working on that for a while. So.
Yeah, I haven't done any additional work there, but there were some possible solution in generating, because the counterpoint, the annoying part of not having that automatically or statically initialized is that with this global static initialization, we have like an automatic way where you just need basically to add a line in your new file, in your new table, and then automatically, just by compiling it and linking that file to the rest, it will auto-register. Instead, if you have to do the registration at runtime, you have to specify that you have to call a function, basically. Remember to call a function to register the table. But what I was saying is that you can generate a file from CMake that contains those register calls, which then do run at runtime. So it will still be automatic. So yeah.
Cool. I think that's everything on our agenda. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about anything.
I added some
Oh,
updates
you're right.
on the
Enterprise security. Take it away, Charvel.
Yeah, so from last office hours, a couple of design changes. Instead of having one publisher and multiple subscribers, I had to change it to one publisher, one subscriber for this. So there's some advantages. Watchdog doesn't kill because FIM can be a fire hose. There's less load on the host, and we can independently manage both process events and process file events with muting different paths, meeting different path prefixes. And the other thing is that the previous functionality is like as is and works transparently, so it doesn't affect anything. There's some caveats. The path muting doesn't work that great on Catalina. So I might just condition out that only works on Big Sur and Monterey. And the other caveat is that we'll have one additional run loop and thread, which is fine. It distributes the load. But there's also an error that Apple has, which says you can't have a new client. There are already too many clients on the system. We haven't hit it yet. I've tried it with 10, 12. Apple doesn't have any documentation. I don't think there's a set limit. I think it calculates like load on the system and then kind of, returns that error if someone new client tries to register.
Is there any way to see the number of enterprise security clients?
Endpoint security clients? No, there's no. You can do like, you can see like open files for each processes and then figure out if lib endpoint security dot, dilib is mapped into that, but no other way.
I'm thinking about, like, imagine I was an administrator. Okay, so this is a bit of a tangent, right? But like, imagine I'm an administrator and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to go turn on this new enterprise table, and Osquery coughs up an error saying macOS wouldn't let me. There are too many endpoint security clients. Where would I even start?
There might be a way. I'll need to look at the header files.
I'll also say, like, I don't think we have to do anything, right? There's nothing we can do, but I feel like there's an interesting documentation question or something about it, or maybe there's a table to be had about enumerating them.
We already have a column called is platform binary, which is all the binaries signed by Apple. I'm assuming there's something similar to like, is this an ES client binary or something? I don't know. I'll have to research it.
No big deal. It's not a blocking thing. It's just a sort of vital
I
thought.
think Amir was about to say something.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I have a very quick question for Chavril, please. Osquery has authorization to use endpoint security?
There's no authorization. We just do not support authorization events. We only support notify events.
Hold on. Can
You
you say that
notify
question
events,
again?
I'm asking if Osquery has authorization from Apple to use whether authorization or if only just events from endpoint security, because you need the actual signature from Apple.
Entitlements?
Yeah.
Yep, we already have that. Osquery 5 dot whatever already ships with it. The current ES process events table works. This is just adding new table and new functionality. It's already code signed. It's already notarized.
Yeah, but there's a separate question, which I guess Amir was not asking, which Trevor was initially answering, which is you can stop an event and authorize it or not, but Osquery doesn't do that. It just collects the events, read only.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah. I'm also hoping this will be out tomorrow, having PR, and I'll tag 5.4.
Nice.
You want to tag 5.3 or 5.4?
I think 5.4 it might need a little bit of because I don't have Catalina access anymore. Yeah. It's a
I
little bit
probably have a
hooking.
Catalina machine.
And
Yeah, I
I
have
think
one.
we might have to update the minimum macOS SDK from 10.12 to 10.13. I'm trying to figure out some weak linking issues. There's always the DL open, DL sim method, but Apple discourages that.
I feel like we've been having to have the conversation about minimum supported Mac versions every 6 months or so at this rate.
Because we
Yeah,
brought it up
sorry,
so
not a huge fan
incrementally.
of it, but
Right,
If we were more aggressive, we could buy ourselves bigger pieces of time.
well, or not, because we do have a significant number of people that use it on lagging clients. So,
Who
like,
are these people?
well, we know who uses it with CentOS 6.
Yeah, yeah.
We know people are lagging on Linux servers, but do we really know that folks are lagging that far on macOS versions?
Yeah, macOS is not really a server OS.
If anyone was to know, I would think, or anyone had capabilities to know, and anyone would have customers that was doing that, I think it might be you at Collide, Seth.
Or you. Well, the 3 people who might know are me.
I don't think that we have any customers. I don't know about our open source users, but I don't think that we have any customers who are using very old versions of macOS.
I don't think we do either. I'm not even convinced Launcher supports them anymore.
I think we should bump the macOS minimum versions. We've talked about this before. I'm down to be much more aggressive with the macOS.
I would need to actually review things before I committed to anything, but tentatively speaking, you would be bumping to what?
Catalina?
10.13.
Which is
Or Catalina would be ideal, but from
10.13
10.12.
is which?
High Sierra.
We can absolutely
Endpoint
bump to High
security
Sierra.
work from 10.15.4.
Endpoint security requires a much newer machine. Talking about changing the overall SDK to require a minimum thing. So right now you can run on something pre-endpoint security, but you can't access the endpoint security tables. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
My understanding about High Sierra is that my recollection is that High Sierra was supposed to be a compatible upgrade for every piece of hardware that it was released on.
Oh, hardware, okay.
Like there shouldn't have been anything that couldn't go from Sierra to High Sierra. And I am absolutely in favor of bumping minimum versions to High Sierra. I would have to think really hard about whether to go past Mojave. But I have no qualms going to High Sierra.
That will also permit us to use STD optional in its full glory, because the dot value, like when you access the value of the optional, that function for some reason it has been only implemented on 10.13 and forward.
I swear this came up before because I remember commenting that High Sierra should be totally fine.
Yeah, I'm switching the issues list for where we might have discussed this.
And this would have been in office hours somewhere. But yeah, my recollection is that High Sierra was supposed to be a minor upgrade to Sierra, so there's very little reason to keep something at Sierra. And this is all like 5+ years ago too, right? So I am likely strongly in favor of bumping to 10.13, especially if it makes implementation easier for anything.
Yeah, that would help a lot because weak linking is better implemented.
Well, you've got tentative approval, so no disagreements, I think, on that. I don't even think Collide supports High Sierra. I don't think Launcher runs on it. So. Other questions? Other agenda items? If not, we could have 10 minutes back, or we could peruse some PRs up to people.
I'll take a look at my old pull requests. I think some of them can be closed.
I leave that up to you. I'm pretty sure I could close out some of my old PRs. But I don't know if there's any we want to look at as a group or if we should just kind of try and go through that stuff. If no one's excited to look at old PRs, then I'm going to suggest we end today's office hours and enjoy our 9 minutes in however we'd like to. Thank you all for your time and your code and efforts in moving things along. So I think we could probably end it.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
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 Bye.